3 weeks ago today, or rather 3 weeks from today, El Salvador will officially accept Bitcoin as legal tender. This didn't come out of nowhere. Years ago, the founders of Bitcoin Beach worked with the people in the town of El Zonte, El Salvador, to educate people and get businesses to use Bitcoin for daily transactions. But the value of that grassroots level work isn't unique. Elsewhere in Latin America, Curacao is, all to be exact, BTC Curacao is working in the city of Willemstad to educate and teach local businesses to use Bitcoin. And joining us now to discuss is the director of BTC Curacao, Pete Kroll. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you. So everyone, Pete is a Bitcoin OG, original gangster. So most people know Pete as making a valuable contribution to the crypto world by inventing the first paper wallet at bitaddress.org. Now, Pete, you found this new project. Maybe you can start by explaining how you've pivoted to this new role.
Yeah, really the COVID pandemic inspired us to start BTC Curacao. So here in Curacao, pre-COVID, most businesses didn't have a web shop. It's very much like in person, you go to the store type of shopping experience here in Curacao. And Visa and MasterCard hasn't been widely deployed in webs. And so the businesses kind of themselves started to pivot towards web shops and digital payments. And many of the business merchants here are innovative, and they've opened their mind to Bitcoin. And so many businesses work over WhatsApp, and their inability to take a digital payment is partly what inspired me to start promoting Bitcoin more actively on the island.
We have some of the milestones here. Over 60 businesses are accepting Bitcoin, over 5 accepting Lightning Bitcoin. In 2018 was the world's first grocery store to accept Bitcoin. That's in Curacao, correct? And in 2021, you've got the world's first grocery store to accept Lightning Bitcoin. Tell us a bit about this.
Yeah, the grocery store here, Esperamos, has some innovative owners, and they're into accepting many forms of payment, and Bitcoin is one of them, which they asked me for some help in 2018 with some technical questions, and I provided them that help, and they've been accepting Bitcoin ever since. And the grocery store is kind of like the center point of economic life. So by them taking Bitcoin, it becomes much easier to convince other businesses to accept Bitcoin and other people to accept Bitcoin. And in 2021, we saw a fee event on the Bitcoin network where fees started spiking to $25 or $30 in May. And that's created a catalyst for businesses, including Esperamos, the Lightning Network as a form of payment.
So tell us what we're seeing here. I understand you created your own Blue Wallet, and we saw some transactions being done. And so what is the activity? Are people using this? How many people? What's the proportion, and what's the engagement?
Blue Wallet is not my creation. It's an open source project that I support through GitHub pull requests and donations, and I'm promoting it on the island because I've tested a lot of Bitcoin only and Lightning wallets, and that kind of hit all the check boxes. So what you're seeing there is that's some purchases at local retailers. The first one that was shown was there at Esperamos. I believe 5 or 10 or 20 people a week are showing up to Esperamos to spend Bitcoin. It's less so other retailers, but I have hard statistics on how many people are spending Bitcoin. But based on our social media following, I believe 1.5% of Curacao is holding Bitcoin. We have a strong core Bitcoin community here of 150 people on a Signal chat, 250 people on our meetup.com group, 900 people in our Telegram group. So it's not just me teaching them Bitcoin. Community members are doing a lot of the work too, where they patron, they talk to the owners about accepting Bitcoin, and it's going really well in the last year.
Can you tell me a bit about the currency system in Curacao right now? And I don't know if they're dealing with the same. They're probably not dealing with the same inflationary concerns as Venezuela. But why? What makes them want to gravitate toward a digital currency?
Well, we partly share some of the challenges that El Salvador faces. We have a currency that's pegged to the US dollar, so we're dollars here, but people don't actually have savings in dollars. There's a 2% tax penalty if you're holding dollars. So if you have a Visa or MasterCard on the island, to use that, you have to pay the 2% tax. And there's roughly 30% of the population is unbanked here because the banking sector is very conservative and following all the international rules. So it's required to have a job or some provable economic situation in order to have a bank account. And then there is 10% of the population that's undocumented and they don't have access to traditional banking.
Mm-hmm. So another obstacle I would say that many people bring up is education. And you mentioned that you're running a marketing campaign to bring awareness about Bitcoin. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, we have some billboards physically around the island right now, which is comparing the price of Bitcoin in 2011, which could buy you one pizza, to 2021, which now you can buy a car. And, people WhatsApp us every day and ask more information about Bitcoin. So some people are just being exposed to Bitcoin for the first time based on our billboard campaigns. We've also wrapped a minibus with a Bitcoin only advertisement, and that's kind of a tribute to what was done in Hong Kong. We thought that was pretty cool, so we did that here too. And the local language here, which is spoken by the majority of the people, is Papiamentu. Trying to provide our site and our videos in English and Papiamentu because there is otherwise for Papiamentu only speakers no other way for them to learn about Bitcoin.
Right. What are some of the other challenges? Because I'm just noticing even your internet connection is a little dicey. So, I mean, do people have access? Is it good access to electricity? And when dealing with transactions and fees as well as any lag, how is that dealt with?
Data usage is still not.
Okay.
Yeah, my internet's lagging. So we had two internet companies that were big here merge, and that's kind of reduced competition, which is kind of reduced speeds. But data internet on the cell phone is a challenge for spending Bitcoin at retail locations. Some retailers can provide Wi-Fi access to users, but that's still an impediment to adoption. But it's still the vast majority of the people, like 3/4, have smartphones. But how many of them have data internet, I'm not quite sure, but there's a big gap there.
So I'm wondering if, as you watch El Salvador, which is about to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender in 3 weeks, do you think Curacao also has a path toward doing something similar?
I'm in favor of the status quo here in Curacao, which things are friendly for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is considered an alternative to legal tender, which is the same status that the euro has. So businesses are free to accept it. The central bank has been open to many discussions, as well as the Ministry of Economics. So they're open to having conversations, and we've had many conversations there. I think due to the international financial order, it's maybe not the appropriate time for Curacao to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. There are some banking challenges in Curacao that need to be organized. There was one high-profile bank collapse that happened in the last 5 years. So the central bank has a lot to manage with that.
You mentioned international border concerns. Could you elaborate?
I'm not quite sure what you mean about what you're referring to. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you mentioned something about international border concerns, but well, it's interesting that you
Sorry,
are
I meant
talking.
the international order, like following that we're very dependent on U.S. correspondent bankings,
Yeah.
the U.S. Anti-money laundering rules, the
Okay,
Financial
right.
Action Task Force. So Curacao is, strictly adhering to all those things. And then there was a bank called Giro Bank here that collapsed, and a lot of people still haven't got their money. So there's a debt obligation there that has to be cleared from the central bank to various account holders. So that's a big challenge that would kind of come first before something more innovative like adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender.
Do you see some activity in remittances as having an advantage in Curacao?
Yes, there is a large Hispanic population here, especially with the diaspora that happened from Venezuela. There's 20,000 legal Venezuelan residents here, so there's a lot of demand to remit money back to Venezuela, but also Colombia. So that is a big market here, and we are considering to target that market with education as well.
It's interesting what you said about kind of respecting international order, the international order, if you will, because there are now ratings agencies that are downgrading the credit of El Salvador because of this new Bitcoin law that they're adopting. And so that is having an impact on Curaçao's decision on whether or not to formally adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Is that the case?
That might be the case, and I think there's a lot to learn from El Salvador, but I think we need to be patient and give them 1 or 2 or 3 years and see how that plays out. And here we're really at the learning curve stage. So even though there's 60 plus businesses accepting Bitcoin, since many of those businesses won't be doing Bitcoin transactions each and every single day, there's still that learning curve and training obstacle for staff to get comfortable accepting Bitcoin. And so I think that's an important part of the journey that we can take right now before the government has to think about something more serious or impactful from a legal perspective.
And Pete, just one last question before we wrap. I understand that, well, you're from Toronto. I actually, just full disclosure, I met Pete's sister through a friend, and she said, "You've got to meet my brother. He is a Bitcoin OG. He invented the paper wallet," and we met a couple of years back. So I'm wondering why did you think this would work more in a place like Curacao, or why did you want to make it work in a place like Curacao versus Canada or the United States or somewhere in a more developed nation?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, it's because I live in Curacao and I kind of want to change where I live, and I enjoy the freedom I get when I spend Bitcoin. And secondly, there's a lot of mom and pop shops here. So if they want to take Bitcoin after the conversation, they can just make that decision. It's not like they're a franchise that has to talk to headquarters and that there's a long drawn out process. And those are the main reasons.